of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Any changes or additions to the agenda tonight? All right, negative. So consider a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So move.
Moved, and can I get a second?
Second.
Seconded, okay. Any discussion about the consent? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed,
Aye.
signify by saying no. All right, consent agenda is passed. The reports and presentations. Just to listen to Corey Plager is going to talk. Tell us about bonds. The floor is yours, Corey.
Good evening.
Consent agenda is passed. The reports and presentations. Just to listen to Corey Plager is going to talk. Tell us about bonds. The floor is yours, Corey.
Good evening. How are you? And I'm also going to see, I think I saw John just dialed in. John, are you out there?
He's not on our screen, unless he's the phone number at the bottom.
He should be the phone number. I can log in. I have a Gmail account, but our work isn't very compatible with Google. So I'll give him one more shout out, see if he can unmute or speak before I can go ahead and do the intro too.
Yeah. John, are you there? Can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
There you go. Now he's here.
Hey, I'm there. Yay. Okay, good. Well, thank you. And thank you for putting us so early on the agenda. We put together a presentation tonight that will look at election results statewide. We'll look at the EP&O levies. We'll look at capital projects levies, and we'll look at bond issues. We'll answer some questions often raised. When is the best time to run an election? What are the results of running bonds and levies together? District does know about that. And then Corey has put some information together specific to Eatonville, looking at the district's election success, assessed value history and tax rates. And then lastly, we have some trends that we're seeing on elections, mainly in the area of tax rates and our voters. What kind of resistance are we running into with voters and tax rates? So with that, Corey, are you able to share the presentation on the screen?
Yeah, Kimberly, would you like me to share screen, try it from my end, or are you going to share it from your end? I can give it a try here. Can you see that?
We can.
Yes.
Perfect. It might not be the largest, but I think we can make this work here.
Yeah. And we have a paper
Technology
in front of us too, so we're good.
Perfect.
Oh, good. Technology is a beautiful thing when it works. So the first page is an overview of what's going on with what we now call EP&O levies, or education programs and operations levies. We used to know them as maintenance and operation levies. You can see we've been tracking this for some time. So far in 2021, we're at a 91% passage, up slightly from what we saw in 2020, even though close to 90%. Doesn't tell the whole story, however, because in 2020, we had 6 districts with double levy failures. We actually had 12 that failed on the February ballot in 2020. So the numbers, even though they're passing, we're passing at fewer numbers and we're passing by a smaller percentage. You'd have to go back to prior to the simple majority passing in 2007 going to effect 2008 to see results as low as what we have right now. On the next slide, capital projects levies, and that is showing continued strong support for capital projects levies. The high water mark was really back in 2018 where we had 65 on the ballot. A lot of districts using the capital projects levy as a way to manage tax rates with the drop that was coming in the local levy due to McCleary. And in 2021, we've had 13 on the ballot, and we've had a 92% passage rate. We did have something happen in 2020 that never has happened before, and that's where we had a school district pass their capital projects levy, but fail their EP&O levy. We hadn't seen that before, so that was a first. On the next slide are school bonds. Well, you can see so far in 2021, there haven't been any districts that have run. In fact, going back to November of 2020, we've not had a single bond on the November, February, or April ballot. And this is my 32nd year working with school districts across the state. And frankly, I can't ever recall seeing this, but I do understand it because school districts have so many other things they're managing right now. But you can see in 2020, we had 24 school districts on the ballot and a 33% passage. That number would have been slightly higher. Aberdeen School District failed by literally one vote. They were 59.999. It just, and that happened in February of 2020, which you could argue was pre-COVID. And then when COVID hit, they decided not to run again. So since that time, we've just not had any bonds on the ballot. Question we often get on the next slide: when is the best time to submit an issue to the voters? February is by far and away the best for bonds, EP&O, and capital levies. April is a good time for those EP&O levies, for those districts that failed in February that rerunning in April. And we had that yesterday. We had some districts that failed in February, reran in April. There's a couple that are pretty close, but it looks like we're going to have a better success than we did last year. August just is not a good time to run. We just have found that it's just not the time we want to run. We actually had 5 districts run in 2020. They ran their EP&O levy because they had failed it in February and thought with COVID by August maybe all of this would be behind us. Well, we certainly not the case. And 5 ran and all 5 lost. August is a tough time. We have found though that if you're a park and rec district or a fire district, they tend to do better in August. I think the park and rec districts, when they're running an issue for a pool, people can't wait to get their kids out of the house and into the pool. So I think that's one of the reasons. And then August, we've now had this kind of fire season that we've had at later part of the summer. But for schools, it's not a good time in August, but it's actually an okay time in November for bonds. And we don't see too many levies, but we see bond issues actually do a little bit better in November than we would see in April, which has been a change. The next slide is running an EP&O at the same time as a bond, and the district has history with this. These numbers are changing slightly over time. We're actually seeing that running a bond and levy together has very little impact on the levy and actually increases the percentage yes of the bond issue. Now, it doesn't mean it's an overwhelming success for the bond issue. That 60% supermajority is a high hurdle. But the good news is we've not had a district fail an EP&O and pass a bond issue. Now, I mentioned earlier, we've seen that with the capital levy, but we have not seen that with the bond issue. So the next slide is the district's election history, and I'll turn it over to Corey.
Thanks, John. So we have a few slides here that we're going to talk about specifics for Edenville School District. And I think this helps us paint a picture about what's been happening over the last 2 decades when it comes to elections. And we see this a lot with school districts, the ebb and flows of voter support, seeing, really high levels of support for all the green issues, which are the education program levies. We've seen districts sometimes have it struggle in the mid 2000s. We saw that to be more common when you needed 60%. It's hard to see a EP&O levy failing at almost 58%. But now with simple majority starting in 2008, your levies have received great levels of support. And then you see in tan, the new capital levy, which in 2018, it was a great strategy as the state was limiting what you could collect locally to create that capital levy, whether it's for technology or for support on the side, that things the general fund might have paid for originally. So, and we know that was a 6-year capital levy scheduled to expire after the year 24. So your capital levy and your EP&O levy will be due at the same time. And we shared a slide that the bonds do more favorably when run together, but capital levy is even better. So capital levies, when run at the same time as an education program and operations levy, do really well. And we think it's because you have to communicate both of them side by side. You're not asking voters to approve things in back-to-back years, or more recently, they just said, didn't we just pass this? So the district set up really well for 2024 when it comes to renewing the EP&O levy and considering renewing that capital levy to some extent. On this slide, this shows your school assessed valuation history. And in 2021, I believe it was almost a record year for the school district with 11% growth in your community. And some of that growth was due to new construction, which was almost $24 million in new construction. So the district is really flirting with that $2 billion in property value. And John and I look at this as a double-edged sword. New property base is really great for helping support the schools. It really does reduce your bond tax rate since your principal and interest payments are set. It also, in the new McCleary model, allows you in some flexibility with collecting additional resources. But when we notice that growth gets to like the 10% plus range, some people feel that their property values are getting too high from a perspective of having taxes be affordable. So it's a double-edged sword. That's why we shared that information about new construction. Your growth isn't solely from reassessments, but it's a combination of people's property values increasing with new development. So there are new people coming to share in the responsibility of paying those school district taxes. And on this slide, it takes a look at your property values as the base, but what is the district requesting when it comes to, in green, EP&O levies? You'll notice the significant drop in the EP&O levy after 2018. That was the McCleary Act, limiting you to $1.50. And they did 1 year. They turned around 1 year later, and in 2020, the limit was $2.50, where the district has settled in now in 21. Now that they had the updated election in 2020, and there's a little sliver there starting in 2019. It shows the Brown capital projects levies, which was well done with the timing there with the other tax rate drop. And you'll notice your bond tax rate peaking in 2013 at $1.86. It is now down to $1.07 from a tax rate perspective due to that increase in property values that has been really strong all the way back to 2015. Now, this is what the school board and the school leadership has control over, is setting these levies, setting these bond and capital levy amounts. But we take the same slide and we overlay it with the state schools tax. This has been one of the biggest debates out there with people that are more concerned about taxes is, well, the state schools tax went up. So what we did is we overlaid your local taxes with the state tax in light gray. It's always been there. Never really front of mind, nothing that we've really communicated with, because it went to Olympia. It was fed through OSPI and then put back out through apportionment formulas or special education formulas. So the new one, though, is in dark gray. And you'll notice that spike in 2018. And when John talked about school districts struggling to pass EP&O levies, not as high support as we used to get. And we think a lot of it might have to do with this tax bump in 2018. There was a lot of media scrutiny of that tax rate increase. And no matter where you lived, it was a pretty big topic back in 2018, 2019. But one thing that isn't making the news anymore was how tax rates have dropped since then dramatically. And even looking at 2021, where Eatonville was able to maximize the $2.50, they're still significantly lower than taxes been on almost the last decade. So we're not seeing a lot of that in the media, and therefore we are seeing a lot of challenges. And I'm not saying that COVID hasn't played a factor, or spirited negotiations, or the property values, like I mentioned. There's a lot of factors. It seems like the perfect storm, but those are some of the reasons we're seeing school districts struggling with passing EP&O levies at this current time. But 2021, the rates were lower, excluding 19 and 20, than they were almost a whole decade. I think it looks like we have to go back to 2010 to find a total rate lower with the state schools tax. And one thing I learned today, John might tease me a little bit, but I was reading the budget bill. That's what I used to do when I was at the ESD, is I used to have to analyze the budget's impact on our school districts. That school tax that you see in 2021, that is $1.03, it appears it will sunset. What I read in the budget is that they didn't renew the state schools tax, which is unfathomable. It was such a pivotal part of the McCleary bill, but I don't see it in the revenues or in the language. It looks like they're going to have that sunset unless they go into action really early, like right away in the next session. So your taxpayers, if everything stands as it is now, will see that $1.03 tax rate disappear next year. So districts may be considering, how does that impact our long-term capital plan and our tax rate planning? A little bit talking about trends, we did notice that fewer school districts are asking for the maximum $2.50, and fewer districts are asking for the old maximum of $1.50. Most districts are either limited because they can't collect $1.50 because they're per pupil, or they're finding that sweet spot between $1.50 and $2.50. And how do they do? Well, this year, this is on the left shows the percentage of yes votes. I know the slide's a little bit small. On the bottom is what the tax rate was. And I put a trend line on here that shows, well, surprise, the more the tax rate was, the less support they received. And, I'm not sure if you've seen the travel commercials where they have Mr. Obvious, and he's telling you things about travel that are very obvious. I'm telling you something that sounds very obvious, but in 2019 and before, our trends were completely flat. School districts were asking for $5.50 or $1.10 and receiving the same levels of support statewide. So pre-McCleary, we didn't see these tax rate sensitivities that we're seeing now in this new world. So this is somewhat new that we've seen. Just for your information, probably not of information to talk about here, but I think a lot of people are always curious about what their peers are doing, hoping not to stand out as maybe the highest taxed or the lowest taxed, where they're putting the least amount of resources or having the highest tax rate. And this, when I look at this, I think if anything, you're right in the middle, maybe to the low middle end from a tax rate perspective, as comparing yourself to the Pierce County school districts. And we'll notice this has been pretty fluid, because not every school has had the chance to go back to the voters since McCleary to get their levy back up to $2.50. And some have had the opportunity and not taken it yet. So there is going to be some movement on here. We haven't seen too much movement in bonds. As John showed, there's just not a lot of districts interested in asking for long-term construction financing this year, but we're seeing a handful of school districts really considering 2022. One new thing that we did, John is really good at coming up with these ideas on analyzing elections. And I like the statistical side. And so he said, Corey, can you analyze the reopening phase as defined by OSPI? So 4 would be completely open as if traditional. 3 is each grade section, so elementary, middle, and high school, are in some kind of in-person part-time. 2 is some of the grade levels are in person, and 1 is completely remote. And we analyzed that in gray. Those are the gray bars here. So you can see, for example, Battleground was in all online only. But if I look at Ephrata, they were at each building level, some in-person instruction. I overlaid that with a green line that shows voter success. And this isn't a surprise. This is maybe another obvious chart is voters responded to districts that had a more open plan. And it wasn't across the board, but the correlation data was pretty strong. But there were some exceptions. Spokane, where my kids go to school, we were not open at all at this time, but they outperformed it and had 65% yes support. Or Meade School District, their high school was open in September, 2 days a week, and they underperformed, according to this analysis, with 52%. And a lot of the feedback from voters was you weren't open enough. So we haven't had any data to be able to analyze how this might impact bond elections, but we do know that the reopening plan, when it came to middle school and high school, did have a significant correlation. Elementary is not so much because almost every elementary was open to some extent this February statewide. A couple final slides here that are not specific to Edenville School District, but I think important to your school district. I saw Rhonda testify on the simple majority bill for school bonds. And we noticed so many schools are getting 54, 57% of support for school bonds, and they're still not passing because of our restrictive laws dating back to the World War II era. But we put these maps together because a lot of folks are reaching out to us to go testify. And they said, is there any materials that we can bring with us? So we did a couple slides here we're going to share with you on some of the information. Now, John, I would love to go testify on behalf of simple majority for bonds, but we think we might be biased a little bit being in this industry. So we were glad to at least provide some information. But one thing we want to point out here is, you know, when you look at the two coasts, Washington's one of the only school districts with supermajority, 60%. And those are the states in green. There are a couple states more restrictive. Idaho and Kentucky are 2/3. So maybe we don't have as bad as we think we do. And then Missouri, don't know where they got their 4/7. Somebody there likes fractions. And then California, I believe somewhat recently was at 60% and went to 55%. And there's been a lot of debate in our state. Should we go to 55%? Should we compromise with those that are not in favor of simple majority? And John and I presented it at many different ESDs. And there was an ESD where we presented the slide and they said, hey, we're all in on 55%. That would be great for us. I analyzed the data. Almost every school district has been failing bonds at 55, 56%, and they'd be really well supported by a middle majority. However, we presented another ESD over in the Olympic Peninsula, and they're failing bonds at 52 to 53% consistently. And they said the 55% compromise would not support us as we move forward. So I can see, even in just different geography regions in our state, a real difference in opinion on moving forward with school bond simple majority. And we were asked, what did the most recent elections look like? Well, we just did the last 4 years. We tried to keep it pretty current. There were 130 school district issues. 97 of those districts were issuing those 130. So you can see a handful had to request multiple times or still requested multiple times and didn't pass. Arlington and Republic tried 4 times. Castle Rock tried 3. They've not been successful to this date. And if we look at districts that were greater than 55%, there would have been 30 more issues passed, 23%. And it's simple majority, there'd be 53 total more issues passed. And thinking about this is a perspective of maybe a COVID relief bill or a stimulus bill, having resources for school construction seems like a pretty positive use of that for me, in my personal opinion. And then finally, John mentioned Aberdeen. This shows the districts that would have benefited from a 55% bond election threshold. And that would have put $1.1 billion into our school system for construction of new elementaries, middle and high schools, and vocational centers, skill centers. So we had this information available in the future. If there's anything we can do to provide information to the board, as there's any discussion moving forward on any of the legislative action, we're happy to support. And then lastly, should the school board be considering any future capital levies or bonds before the EP&O runs out in 2024? we put the election filing dates for the next few elections here for 21 and 22. And it shows when the resolution filing date is in the middle and the date the ballots will be mailed, so that you can meet those ballots with other district information, or should there be a levy campaign, they could be providing posts on those days. So just some information for you to keep available. And then we'll open it up for any questions. I'm going to stop the screen so I can see everyone.
Yeah. Any questions from anybody? No. You didn't leave a lot of room for questions.
No, very well covered.
That is an awful lot of extremely targeted information. I mean, that really speaks for itself and answered questions I didn't know I had.
Well, I think, John, I find these topics really interesting, and we've had a little bit more time this year to really dig in to supporting school districts with levies. So traditionally, our business has used is working on schools' capital projects levies and school bonds and construction. But due to the slowdown in that sector, John and I have just turned our focus and we want to help districts pass EP&O levies, and we shifted focus there. So if there's anything we can do for any of you or other board members, or just make sure all the folks out there know we're ready to support.
Very good.
It's really nice.
Yeah. Anything else? Okay. Lisa, anything from you?
No, sir.
Okay.
Very exhaustive information. So thank you so much for that.
All right. Well, thank you both, gentlemen. DA Davidson has been a great partner with the school district, and we really appreciate your help for a long time now. So thank you for another great presentation and a lot of great information. So thank you for your time, and I'm certain we'll be talking again.
Great. Well, thank you. Appreciate it very much.
Yeah.
Stay
Thank you for the
healthy. Take
invitation.
care.
All right. Take care, guys.
Corey, take care.
Yeah.
Bye.
So I had asked them to present to you knowing that we were up to renew both the capital and the EPO in 2024. And so that we would have enough time to have discussion on the capital levy and to consider a bond issue if that was your route.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Man, those guys took a deep dive.
They did, they are fantastic.
That is a lot of amazing information. Okay, well, let's move on to Jana and Diane and hear about some innovation.
Okay, Jana, you ready?
I'm ready. I'm going to go ahead and present my screen so I won't be able to see any of you. So if you have questions for me, just shout them out so I can get them answered for you.
Okay, thanks, Jana. Well, I'm really excited to introduce this presentation to you tonight. This initiative was born out of a very collaborative process. It starts with Kim Knight, who was thinking about how to best use the ESSER II funds to support our students. And she came up with a great idea, and she brought in Kristen Blaskowitz and myself, and we sat down and we kind of worked on the plan and massaged it a little bit. And then we brought in Jana Rush. And from the beginning, she was all in. And then the next step was we sent a team to the West Valley School District in Yakima. And we wanted to look at their innovative plans and see if there was anything there that we could take back and use in our plan for Edenville Middle School. And then after that, we asked Jana to create a vision and an extensive plan for this idea and this initiative. And you will see tonight that Jana was extremely innovative and thoughtful in creating this plan. The Freshman Preparation Initiative is an amazing opportunity for our students. So the next slide is the grand plan. This is kind of the basis for the whole initiative. And the idea was to infuse ESSER II funds in the Eatonville Middle School over the course of 3 years to support the class of 2026 and beyond. And we wanted to increase CTE offerings, career technical education offerings, and increase CTE offerings to create intentional middle school and high school pathways for the students. And along with that, number 3 was another idea was to offset basic ed funding with CTE. And this truly is Mrs. Rush's plan. And I want to turn the rest of the presentation over to her, and we'll be available for questions at the end. Jana?
Thank you, Diane. All right, so this is like the big picture of everything. The details are not fleshed out yet, but there's a reason why I went this direction. And I'm really passionate about making sure that doors stay open for kids and being able to see doors and open them for kids that when they don't see that there's doors available for them. That really is something that I'm passionate about. And being able to use this ESSER 2 money and CTE funding in order to create doors for kids is really, really inspiring for me. And that's what I really took away from our visit to West Valley. So we have seen a historical drop in SBA scores between 5th and 6th grade. It's not a new thing. This has happened year to year. And that we want to be able to re-engage kids in order to get them hooked back in and not see that drop from year to year. We know there's going to be impacts of COVID-related learning loss. Those impacts are nationwide impacts. I think that this plan is going to provide kids a really centered and practical problem-solving based way to recoup that loss. We know that when kids get to the high school level, and Kim has actually had the Forecast 5 folks run some data for us, and I'll show that data to you in a second. We know that kids are seeking different alternatives once they get to the high school level. Our data has shown that, and we want to be able to provide alternatives earlier on so that kids don't have to go away from the district or seek alternate programs outside of the district to find that pathway. So if we can keep them here, that's our goal. And as you know, gosh, way back when, quite a few years ago, middle school was listed as a targeted one school by OSPI. And that started this process of really looking at things a little bit differently. And as a result of that targeted one designation, we were given Title I funding, and that helped get some of this going. So let's take a look at the data really quickly so that I can show you what. All right, can you see the data?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. All right, so this first slide here, and this is only 4 slides of data. So I'll be really quick with that. This first slide shows that 5th to 6th grade scores drop. And what Forecast 5 was able to do for us, this beautiful data dashboard that we have access to now that takes everything and all this great information about our students and lets us really dig in. And I've had so much fun digging into the data so far. I don't have access to all of the data. I have access to just a limited piece because the dashboards are still being built, but this is super exciting for me. This is what I've wanted to have access to for a really long time. So this is built into cohorts. So what Forecast 5 has done for us is to be able to show you that this cohort of students here from 2018 to 2019, you can see that they're declining in their SBA scores for ELA on the left and then for math on the right. So the levels are broken down by the colors there, and you can see. So it's a significant drop in math, not as much of a significant drop in ELA. The next slide is what I was talking about those alternative programs and those things that kids are looking for that's a little bit different than our traditional pathways. So in 2018, that's when the graduation requirements changed, and all of a sudden kids needed 24 credits in order to graduate. And that impacted our kids We had a huge, that big orange chunk in 2019 and 2020 and 2021. Those are kids that are seeking alternative programs, alternatives, anything alternative in grades 9 through 12. And that huge big chunk of red, those are the kids that are in our re-engagement programs. So in 2018, when those graduation requirements changed, that forced so many of our kids to look for something different because they weren't going to be able to graduate without it. We want to try to fix that. These next two slides go hand in hand. This is our 9th grade on track. And this is one of the things that OSPI tracks for us. And so one of the great things that is coming from this is that Forecast 5 is building the middle school a 9th grade on track dashboard. And so I've been able to pick certain data points from Skyward, from SBA scores, MAP scores, grades, all sorts of awesome things to be able to build this dashboard and get early warnings about kids that are not on track to be successful in 9th grade. And so we'll be able to track them early on and move forward. But this is really interesting to me. So in 2019, over 80% of our non-low income 9th graders were on track. And you can see we've had a positive, nice positive trend for non-low income from 2017 to 2019. This last slide I have right here is our low income students. They hit a spike, a top out of on track at only 60% of our 9th graders in 2018 were on track in the low income category. And they dropped down to about 55% in 2019. So our non-low income students are making that great trajectory and they're on the right track. We're struggling with those kids that are low income. So these are the nice data points that we have in order to look at some interventions. So I'm going to go back to sharing my tab again. All right, so that's the why. So here's the plan. And the next slides talk about the plan as it's kind of the big rocks of the plan, the big pieces of the plan over the next 3 years. So we've already started spring and summer right now. I'm going to seek conditional CTE certification for 2 of our science teachers. They're on board, they're ready to go. I just need to work with Kim to get into the pieces I need to do online to get that certification conditional. And then the big orange check mark is next to the CTE frameworks that we've already submitted. And since you guys have access to this, I believe not just in paper, but digitally, the 7th and 8th grade science frameworks are linked there. And what this basically does is just transfers the funding source for 7th and 8th grade science from basic education, which is where those teachers were funded from before, into the CTE funding stream so that that's that offset piece. So if I'm funding teachers a different way, then it allows me to be more innovative and do different things with the money that would normally be set aside for basic ed teachers. So those have been, the CTE frameworks have been submitted to OSPI for approval. We're waiting to hear back from them. The science teachers are going to be able to create the project-based lesson plans to go with those CTE frameworks that have been submitted. The 6th grade teachers are going to, this is the one that we know. We've got 6th graders that are coming in with, that need some skills, and we want to be able to create a warrior skills class that uses our social emotional learning curriculum and our AVID curriculum and front load all of those social emotional learning tools that they need to be successful at middle school, and front load those executive functioning, the organizational, the note taking, the how to study, all those types of skills. We want to hit them hard with that. And I really want the 6th grade teachers to own that And so I'm going to give them time to be able to blend those two programs together and create that curriculum using the materials that we have that's really going to set our sixth graders up for success so that they're going to be on the right foot when we start middle school in the fall. And then to get some more staff trained in those AVID strategies, I will be sending up to 5 staff to the Summer Institute this summer, which is all digital. And so we don't have to pay for travel. We don't have to pay for hotels. We don't have to pay for those types of things. So that's a nice thing. Yeah. So then next school year, and there's 2 slides for year 1. We'd like to add 9th grade health into the middle school master schedule. Jessica Morris has taught 9th grade health at the high school level. And so we'd like to be able to offer that to our 8th graders. So give them that jumpstart opportunity to get some high school credits out of or half a high school credit, and that standalone class that kind of holds some of them up down the road when they're trying to decide on that pathway and make those decisions. We'll add the warrior skills class for our 6th graders. We want to not leave out our 7th and 8th graders with our warrior time. So we want to enhance that. Second step, that social emotional learning curriculum has lessons that are designed for advisory. So we're going to incorporate those, as well as use the Zello, which high school uses, but start building in those college and career readiness pieces at the middle school level. So we'd like to work on that during our warrior time, which is our advisory time. Again, we're going to enhance 7th and 8th grade science with the CTE frameworks, but we don't want to leave 6th grade out, and I cannot use CTE funding for 6th grade, but 6th grade needs to have something that's going to feed into what the 7th and 8th grade science teachers are going to do. And so the 6th grade teacher will work with the 7th and 8th grade teachers on creating a quote, 6th grade CTE framework, even though it's not CTE, it'll be a 6th grade science framework that makes sure all of our science standards are covered between 6th grade and 8th grade. So he'll be able to fill the gaps and make sure that what he's doing lines up with what 7th and 8th grade are going to be doing as well. We'll continue professional development for staff with blended learning. Serendipitously, the middle school started our blended learning professional development with staff last year before COVID hit, and before we had to scramble and become fully online. And teachers benefited from that. They really were thankful that we were able to start that last year, and are ready to jump and move forward now. And so we're excited about that. We're going to continue the staff teaming that we started with our Title I funding, and looking at our data and really analyzing what it is that students are coming to us with and what they need in order to be successful on the state test, and for those critical skills that take them from grade level to grade level and endure in the long term. And content areas, so like language arts and math and all those social studies, will all have a learning management, a digital system to be able to keep track of those. So we're going to be able to use this money to make sure that teachers have the time in order to analyze the data and create the common assessments that we can use to track things and load all of that into the learning management system. I'm excited to be able to offer extended day opportunities for students. AVID has a collaborative study group training and process that's really great. It takes what the AVID students are able to do in their tutorials in the classroom, and it kind of extends it it's designed for outside or extended day opportunities. So we'll be able to do that. So it'll be a kind of a very structured tutorial tutoring homework opportunity for kids after school. And then we'll be able to extend our STEM offerings after school as well. So instead of just athletics and tutoring, we'll be able to add some additional clubs. Year 2, I'd like to add an applied algebra class for high school credit. We took this idea from West Valley, which has a 2-period applied algebra class So students get algebra credit and for the algebra period of the class. And then, but they apply their algebra skills and they work side by side. The algebra teacher and the CTE teacher work side by side. So all of that algebra learning was done in a very practical sense and had a project-based anchor to go with it. So students were seeing the reason why we need to learn algebra and the reason why algebra is important in your everyday life. So I'm excited for that. And to do that, we would need to do some remodeling of the existing art room. And that would have to happen not this coming summer, but the following summer, so that it would be able to accommodate the class. We would like to, this is a hope and a dream. It may not, this may not be able to happen, but use the mastery-based learning that those board policies and procedures that were passed earlier, and talk about competency-based credit in order to start offering CTE credit for grades 7th and 8th CTE classes, so that the high kids could start earning those CTE credits for high school at the middle school level as well. So there's a lot, like I said, there's a lot of kinks to work out. Doesn't have all the details. This is one of those detail pieces that we're really going to have to work on next year. That's why I didn't put it on the year 1 plan. We'll have next year to work out the details so that we can implement that in year 2. To continue with year 2, we are going to continue to explore what things we can offer for high school credit at the middle school level. Continue our staff teaming so that they can continue to add those lessons to the learning management system. And what I would also like to do over the summer at the end of the 22-23 school year is add a college and career guidance staff member to the building, so that my current social worker, Mrs. Parks, can focus on the mental health aspects and the social emotional aspects that are needed at the middle school level. And I would have someone else to be able to help with the college and career guidance, the guidance counseling types of pieces that need to happen early on at the middle school level so that students are set up for success in high school. That summer 2023, we would look at taking our old home economics classroom and remodeling that so that we're ready for, in year 3, being able to add a culinary arts pathway through CTE, and partnering with Grits to take some of the food that they grow there and be able to incorporate that into our program. And then year 3, our ESSER 2 money would need to be spent early on in the school year. So we're going to continue looking at those pathways and expanding our high school credit offerings for students. Questions?
I have questions.
Lay them on me, Lisa.
Okay, at the beginning of your presentation, Jana, there was a forecast 5 chart. Ouch! Stop it! I'm sorry. Oh my God. So about the math chart, and you talked about the low income data, that there was a spike and then it went down the year of 2019.
Yep. So let me pull that back up for you.
Please. So
it's taking a long time to load. I apologize.
That's all right. But can I continue talking and
Absolutely.
then while you? Okay. How is that? I'm asking about the intervention for those students, and how is that related to the presentation that you just presented to us with the CTE? How are we helping the low income students so that they can get out of that hardship in terms of the math performance? Does that make sense?
Yes. So are you talking, can you see is the one that says non-low income students right here? So this is 9th grade on track data.
Okay, I'm talking about the low income students.
Right, so this one that says low income, this is 9th grade on track data as well.
All right.
So these last 2 slides, this one where it says non-low income students, that was 9th grade on track for non-low income students. and then 9th grade on track for our low income students.
Okay, so, but how do we help them to get back on track in terms of the programs that you're presenting right now?
Okay, so the programs that, by creating pathways for kids that are career and in both career and college, those low income students will use that project-based learning, those types of things to provide a practical anchor for their learning rather than just sticking them in a remedial math class and having them do more skills practice. That applied algebra class is really the one that I am really excited about. That's what West Valley did for their students that were not on track to be skill ready for 9th grade math. They did the practical application of algebra along with the algebra skills all at the same time. There was a physical and visual application of algebra to anchor those skills too.
Got it. So there will be a plan of action for those students in terms of intervention for those students so we can help them.
My hope is that I'm going to be able to send a different product. Okay. And kids are not products, right? But in that sense, I'm going to be able to send a different kind of student now to the middle school or to the high school as a result of being able to do all of the project-based learning that's CTE based at the middle school.
All right.
So the other thing, correct me if I'm wrong on my track here, is we're looking at about a 20% disparity between non-low income and low income entering 9th grade. So the presentation here, from what I understood, is we're trying to target them beginning in 6th grade so that we don't have the disparity entering 9th grade, to have everybody at a closer level as they enter high school.
You got it.
Okay.
So Matt, and I would like to kind of expand that. The intent of what the presentation that Jana just did is going upriver, right? Lisa, you were asking about those specific students. Those specific students are now juniors and seniors. Okay?
Correct.
So, okay. All right.
And regardless of this program that Jana is presenting, I think I'm going to go outside that and say, how are we helping those students in terms of what type of intervention are we providing so that we can help them be successful in the next grade level? I guess I went beyond just what Jana is presenting, but I do understand what she has presented so that they can be prepared when they enter high school, which I'm a little saddened by that because my son would have been very well prepared as he entered 9th grade. So,
Gianna, not to look backwards too much, but have we identified anything or even hypothesized why that trend went down in 2019 for the low-income kids?
We haven't had a chance to really dig into the data that way. That data is that 9th grade on track data is based on their freshman performance. So it's not in preparation for their freshman year. That's not when the data is gathered. It's gathered when they're actually freshmen.
Got it. And second question, is there a reason that 6th graders are excluded from CTE funding? Is that something that is worth pursuing to change?
6th graders are considered elementary students as far as OSPI funding is concerned.
yeah.
Yes, that would be something to consider
So
doing some lobbying around.
So there's really no good reason that they're not. I mean, it's not based on any science like developmental ability or anything. It's just a categorization.
Yeah,
It's
it's
junior
a
high system.
remnant.
Yeah, that's something that I would love to
That's over.
That should be a
go
great
talk to
easy
some people about.
thing to lobby on.
So I think it seems to me there would be a definite benefit in being allowed to spend CTE money on 6th grade. All
I
right.
agree.
I have another question. So,
Get going.
Another question is, Jana, I think what such a brilliant idea of combining the SR2 and CTE program with that one. I just really appreciate that. Once the SR2 runs out, right? Will CTE funding be able to at least sustain the program that you have built? Did we forecast that beyond SR2 funds?
Yes, because CTE is that golden egg that has that extra bonus of funding that comes along with it. So it's like you get your apportionment plus a little bit extra. So I foresee that with that CTE funding, we'll be able to, well, the ESSER funding, I see it kind of as a seed. It's going to be able to develop those pieces, and then the CTE funding will be able to continue them on after that ESSER funding is done.
Okay, that's what I was wanting to, because sustainability is very important in those type of programs. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely, and I don't want to start kids on a path and then have to say, "Oh, sorry,
Yes.
we're all done. We can't do it anymore." That's I don't want to build something like that.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. That makes me happy.
Angelina.
Hello, thank
Be so
you.
polite and use the raise your hand button.
Yes, I didn't want to interrupt anyone. Thank you very much. I just kind of have a question, if you don't mind me asking, about like your career and college readiness program. Are you like specifically only focusing on college, or are you focusing on all schools, like including trade schools? Because I know some kids are not like college ready or college prepared, or like school just doesn't work for them. So I also want to promote trade schools too, not just college. And I was wondering if you worked that into your program as well.
Absolutely. We're talking about college and career ready. It encompasses trade schools. It encompasses community colleges. It encompasses lots of different things. That's why it's not just a college ready track. It's everything combined together. And Avid has done a great job of promoting that college going culture. We need to support the kids that's not what's going to be the thing for them. That's not their ticket down the road. They need something else too.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I also love the presentation that you put together and everything that you're doing. I really appreciate it. And I think it's going to be very wonderful for the kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Angelina.
So Jana and Lisa and board, I just would like to add that funding and the extra funding for CTE does tend to be a lobbyable legislative act. And so I would just encourage us to get as active as we can to meet that additional CTE funding. I know that has been an issue at the state level, and especially for our skill center students as well. So just keep that on the radar. And I think that if you did that and graded a 6th grade option as well, that would be a really strong legislative package that I do believe our legislators in this area would be very supportive of. Because it's highly regulated, it's standards based, and it has to be approved through the state regulations.
I vote that Jana present at the WASDA this coming November about this program, because I think it's such a brilliant idea. Thank you so much.
Let's do it.
Thank you, Lisa.
Okay, so if you would like to do that, I will help with the WASDA presentation submitted if you'd like to do that.
Well,
I think it's a great idea.
All right. We don't push her.
No.
There's a timeline. though,
Okay,
Jeff.
any other questions? Yeah, right, there is. Pretty soon,
Very well
too.
presented. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, any other questions or discussion? Awesome, thank you, Jana. That was.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care. Okay, down. So, Kim, you have an enrollment report for us.
I do, and it's not nearly as excited as the past 2 presentations, so I'll just please forgive me for that. But I am happy to say that April enrollment was essentially flat to March, so we finally stabilized a little for the first time this entire year. Preschool registration has been open for about a month and a half now, and Eatonville Elementary and Warehouse are both full. There are just a couple of slots left at Columbia Crest, so we're really hopeful that this is kind of the harbinger, the trend that's coming for our regular enrollment for next year.
Excellent.
We actually revised our enrollment projections for next year. We kind of moved up from worst case to a more moderate return, where Hauser has already met those enrollment projections as well. So that is making me cautiously optimistic as far as our enrollment for next year. CTE enrollment at the middle school has held strong all year, so that for the first time they are actually covering their staffing costs with money to spare, so that they've actually been able to build on those programs as well. And I know that Jana and Mr. Sneezak have had fun putting their heads together on how to actually expend some of those additional funds this year. As far as the financial report, I would like to point out that the projected fund balance that you see on the expenditure page does reflect the lost transportation and enrollment revenue that we were anticipating pre-close of legislation, which is my segue into kind of my comments if there are no questions on the printed report. So as we know, they did actually pass a budget over the weekend. We are at the very beginning of trying to decipher everything in there. But I have a few initial points that I would like to go over with you. They did enact some transportation hold harmless in the budget. We will actually qualify for both years, this year and next year. So for 2021, what they have done is to take the allocation we have now, which is the reduced allocation, you combine it with last year's allocation and divide it by 2. That's your high water mark, and then they'll backfill you up to that mark from our current. So that's going to give us about another $284,000 then for our transportation budget. For next year, it's a true hold harmless. You get the greater of what their regular formula would generate, or we get the 1920 allocation. So that is tremendous news for us in terms of transportation funding. Columbia Crest, as a high poverty school, does qualify for some additional counseling funding. That begins in the 22-23 school year. Now keep in mind that a prototypical elementary school has 400 students. Columbia Crest sitting at 131 for next year. Would basically qualify for a 0.16375 of a counselor, which is 1 day a week. But it does mean by the year 22-23, they will be funded for 2 days a week. Right now they do split as a settle with Weyerhaeuser. And so they're actually finally almost funded for the counseling staff that they have at the school. Beginning in 22-23, the districts will all receive an additional $25 per student for technology in their MSOCs, for connectivity, for devices, and that will, based on our 1920 enrollment, that'd be about $48,500 for the district for technology. Enrollment stabilization is where it gets just a little bit fuzzier. There are 2 provisions, one for 2021 and one for 21-22. They both reference ESSER funds. They don't specify which ESSER funds. So I was able to sit on a webinar this morning with TJ Kelly and Michelle Matakis from OSPI, in which for 21-22, it was stated that only ESSER 2 funds counted towards the platform. What that means next year is they've agreed to stabilize at $500 per student with a combination of state funds and ESSER funds. So if it is indeed ESSER 2 funds, we will get an additional $384,000 enrollment stabilization for next year. For 21-22, you get to use 1920 enrollment, same funding mechanism in place, minus the ESSER funds, but that's where it's just a little fuzzier. It doesn't, I don't know if it's 1, 2, and 3. I don't know if it's just 1 and 2, because right now we can't even apply for 3. That's not open. So if it is the combination of all 3, we would not qualify. If it is the combination of 1 and 2, then we would qualify. And that would be another $313,000. So OSPI said they hope to have the specifics out by the end of the week, so I'll be able to give you some more definitive answers at that time. They did eliminate all co-pays on lunches for our reduced students. So that's something that they actually funded. So it's not that one of those mandates for the district will be picking up the costs for that. So that is good news for all of our families and for our food service staff as well, that they no longer have to track that quite as well. That's going to be a communications point for us to get out with our families, that it really behooves them then to turn in those forms so that they make sure that they qualify for those services. And the last piece is some really great news for our levies. So for the 2022 collection year, we get to use our 1920 enrollment figures. That's going to make a difference for those districts that are at the per pupil collections versus the 2,500 per thousand. And we are teetering right on that edge of going to a per pupil collection. So that is going to help us tremendously, that we get to count those extra 140 students. That's great. And just on a side note, they released our initial Title I allocations for next year, and we are seeing a tremendous boost, a 77% increase in our Title I allocations, which will benefit the middle school and Columbia Crest. So in addition to the ESSER funds, that's really going to let us do some wonderful things at those buildings. That's all I got.
Excellent. Okay, so any more questions about that? Okay. So no hearings tonight. Unfinished business. Second reading of equivalency credit for career technology. We'll go to Diane and Amy for this one.
Amy. There she is.
I'm here. Sorry, I just realized it got really dark in the room that I'm in, so sorry. This is the way it is.
So we've been reading this over quite a bit together and on our own, and I'm wondering if you had any questions or you want to know about it.
So I'll just remind everyone, when we were looking at all the mastery-based new policies that came through, you wanted to pull this one out and kind of do a second reading. There were questions about that you wanted to address to the high school principal. And so that was the intent of bringing it forward for a second reading. Really, the additions are primarily around mastery-based, if you look on page 3 of 5. The ELA, math, science, and CTE courses, and then the addition of the computer science. So if you had questions about specific classes at the high school.
So my biggest question is, what is this changing based on what we're already doing?
Good question. Amy, address that?
I mean, honestly, nothing. It just formalizes a process for students to earn mastery-based credit. So that's something that we just try really hard to work with kids on that anyway. And, letting them demonstrate competency. So we've done it in we've kind of been doing it for a while. So since we went to the 24 credits and just really trying to ensure that students are able to, like Jana was just talking about, if you have a kid that failed in a class in 9th grade or something, how can we help them to recover that? So if they've taken, maybe they failed their intro to computer science class, but in their junior year, they take a more advanced class and they do well, then we grant that competency-based credit. So it's really, it's just kind of formalizing that process. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, looking at my notes, I had some positive comments. I no concerns. I think Rhonda had a couple questions, but she's not here, so.
So if she has some questions, then she could go back to Diane.
Yeah, she could just email Diane and Amy and follow up that way.
Just another way to remove barriers for kids to be successful. Huge.
Right. So I mean, I certainly don't see any problems with this policy. You know, I like getting, you know, like computer into the science realm. And if the rest of us, well, I mean, I know Rhonda's not against it. So if, I'm happy to vote on it tonight if you'd like to, or we can wait and let Rhonda follow up. Okay. So I would accept a motion then to approve policy 2413 for equivalency credit for career and technology.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing and hearing none. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Please signify by saying no. Okay, we'll pass 2413.
Thank you.
So now moving on to policy 4050.
Yeah, so this is pending. There is some information for you. Make sure that you have a chance to read that and understand. You wanted to put that off until we get an opportunity to have legal advisement. So if you had specific questions between now and the next board meeting, go ahead and send them to me, and we can front load that conversation. This is a tricky one. It's interesting. It's more interesting, I think, than I had anticipated. So I look forward to our conversation, and we'll broker that later.
Yeah, just one
When you're all
quick
there.
question. What other FERPA allowed entities do we share information with? I mean, the only one I
Well, we
can
have
think
data,
of.
we have data agreement with just a small handful, and most of them are government entities.
I know we do with
Yeah.
DOD
Correct.
for recruiting things, but I can't think of any.
No, and DOH, you know, if there's a survey or something like that. But yeah, this is an interesting one.
Yeah, so.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I wouldn't mind knowing who fits into that category.
Okay, so do you want us to do some digging around that?
Just, yeah, what other approved agencies are there? I mean, I know with the DOD one, it was provide the information or wash federal
Okay.
funding.
Okay.
Um,
Diane and I will investigate that. Diane, you can take the lead on that. Because I don't know off the top of my head. I'm thinking, because we have to have data sharing agreement. And if I don't sign any.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, then let's move on to interlocal agreement between South Pierce Fire and the school district for a little mechanic space, it sounds like.
So this is something that I had been approached by Mr. Rayonet about, that he and Rhonda had met with Ray about the possibility of utilizing our space up at the transportation garage. So I had Krista draft just an initial for you to get your thoughts. And if it's something you wish to proceed with, or if you make revisions, we can certainly do that.
Personally, I don't have a problem with that. I think, are we going to be, is our mechanics going to be servicing their vehicles?
Possibly, so we
Yeah.
do have in the agreement that that would be overtime paid by Pierce County Fire and Rescue.
So they do have some personnel then that are, okay. I didn't know they had any mechanic personnel, so.
So if our mechanics service their equipment, how does that work with our risk management?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the last.
How does that work with our risk management if our mechanics service their equipment?
That is an excellent question, and one that I will need to follow up on.
Would
I've
that
run
fall-
into that business though.
Yeah.
That's a great question.
Yeah, that may or may not fall under the
Right.
harmless.
Yeah. But that's a good question. Then who would be responsible?
I don't think it'll be a problem. I mean, there's
Yeah.
lots of agreements like this. A lot of fire departments don't have
Just wanna be sure
mechanics.
that-
Yeah, but no, good catch.
For like to check.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like
Yes.
to check. Is be sure.
I
No, I'm not
appreciate that.
opposed to it at all, but I just want to be sure that we're.
Okay, any more discussion about that? Okay, then we'll find out about that next meeting. Let's move on to policy 6125, voucher certification and approval.
So this is one doing a little sleuthing that we discovered had not been updated since 1988. So the amount, the dollar amount for which we needed pre-approval from the board was $5,000, which is almost every voucher that Carolyn processes every month. And that would delay payment then by an extra month if it had to come to the board for approval before it could be paid. So we are asking that you consider increasing that limit so that we can pay most of the bills without pre-authorization.
Looks to me like it was just updating some numbers, so yeah, I don't have a problem with that. So nobody else does, I'd accept a motion to approve what was it? Policy 6215 as presented.
So move. Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Yeah, what are the exact dollar amount changes? Is it?
It is from the 5,000 to the 100,000.
And is that aligned with our colleagues, all of the other districts?
This is actually aligned with our need in our district. We would not look to see what the bigger districts are. Their amounts are substantially higher than that.
Yeah.
But I think.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, then all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Signify by saying no. Okay. Now that is approved, 6125. So let's move on to resolution 723, which is pretty standard stuff we do.
So we did put this on, as we have the last couple of years, standard procedure, and early on in our enrollment projections. At this time, we don't believe that RIFs are going to be necessary in the district. But it does allow us the flexibility if we've had every unique opportunity in the last year possible. Should another such unique opportunity fall upon us, that we would be able to respond accordingly.
And of course, all these numbers, so we have to make the RIF decision before all
Correct.
the information is in. So,
And
Yeah.
we have met with both of the union representation to inform them, which is good news.
yeah, no,
Because we have been in different places in other years, so.
just something we have to do every once in a
Yeah,
while.
yeah.
Okay, so any other questions? Okay, I would consider an approval, or consider a motion to approve resolution 723 as presented. Moved? Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed,
Aye.
signify by saying no. Okay, 723 is passed. And then we will consider the commitment of funds for EMS staffing stabilization.
So when we first began the discussion of ESSER 2, putting it at the middle school, again, we were thinking there were going to be some staffing reductions. And at that point, okay, then you don't actually get to do anything supplementing or making things better because you're just maintaining the status. So what we would ask for is for your commitment for staffing stabilization in terms of FTE in the amount of $1 million over 4 years, so that she can continue to build upon the program rather than just have to backfill existing staffing. 1 million. And it is just a consensus vote. And it's sometime 3-4 years down the road if you decide you want to take another direction in a certain. So.
Any questions, discussions? Okay, then I would consider a motion to approve the commitment of funds for EMA staffing stabilization as presented.
So move.
Moving second, any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please signify by saying no. Okay, is approved. Get that up and running.
Thank you, board, for doing that. That's very progressive and a pretty
Yes.
important investment in our students.
You got your money, Jana, let's go.
Thank you. It's like Christmas.
Okay, let's go to superintendent comments.
No? E?
Nope.
Oh, E?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
All right, we will consider approval of Washington LEA Academic and Student Wellbeing Recovery Plan of Resolution 724, supporting that plan.
Well, this is a compliance and an opportunity for us to submit once again to OSPI so that because we are required in order to access the federal and state funding, of which we just had conversations about, we must have two things. One is the resolution as adopted. Resolution 724 is boilerplate C, all required for us to be able to access our American Rescue Plan Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief. That is the ARPESSER fund, okay? In addition to that, this is a drop-down exciting plan. That is the work that we are doing now. So if you have any specific questions, but really the plan, number one, we have to do attestations and it has to be publicly posted. Needs to be sent to OSPI by June 1st. And then this is really around universal supports academically and social and well-being, including the diagnostic assessments. This is not new work. So math testing, mastery-based learning, including practices. If you choose to do any summer school, you're not obligated. Equitable grading practices, mental health support. So I wanted to jump on this as soon as possible to get it submitted. There is not really a review process. That was very clear that really we need to make sure that we post this in order to access the funding. So I ask that you consider both as package, and that with that, we will be submitting it probably tomorrow, and then posting it online, along with our very long plan that we will need to update in order for fall 21.
So I have a lot of questions, Kristen. So is that something after we move the motion, or is it before?
So Lisa, well, is it about the resolution?
Well, a lot of this, when I reviewed, there's some things here that I'm asking that I'd like to. So is that something that we do it now, Jeff, or is that?
Ask away.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So on page 1, it says Eatonville, part 2. It says Eatonville School District attests that the school board approved this plan after allowing for public comment, and the date is yesterday. Should that be today?
Well, yes.
All right, so that should be 4/28, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then number 2, the forecast 5 analysis tool, is that something then that's going to be put or placed in the Eatonville School District website as a link?
So when we met with OSPI, Chris Regdahl, we talked about the equity tool. Districts can use whatever they feel fit that would be, so you saw an example today, this evening with Jana, going through, looking at data, trend data, historical data, comparative data, that would allow us to say, wow, that doesn't seem fair, therefore we should use more money and we should address these things. So we are stipulating out that we are using the Forecast 5 analysis tool Other school districts are using a variety of different things. We will not be school online. There will not be a link to school. Does that make sense, Lisa?
So there will not be a link to the forecast 5.
There will be a link to what we use, but we will be linking to specific data.
All right. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Kristen. And then part three, page 2. And that is about the universal supports for all students. Should we be checking the box student voice and perception? Because that is via the student board representation, like Angelina's position right now.
Certainly. Would you like to add that?
Please do.
Okay, that's great.
That would be awesome. All right. And then page 4, number 6. We're missing those that we mark. We're missing grade levels. Is that by default that we're going to do it K through 12?
No, you caught that. Okay.
So that's page 4 and page 5 through page 6.
Well, yes. Actually, so if you look at number 6 on page 4, this is the academic diagnostic assessment, okay? And then if you look at number 7, it's the same question, Lisa. So it's the same question, and then it says grade, and then how many times you did it.
Correct. So shouldn't we at least put the grade level on the page 6?
Yes.
I mean, on the number 6 on those?
Yeah.
All right.
I do believe, and I might not be true, but I do believe that the plan that we have right here, that it has been updated to reflect that.
Okay. All right.
They haven't, I was one of the first people to grab this and fill this out. So, but yes, we can do that. That's very easy because it's the same data on number 7.
All right. Thank you.
You bet.
And then can we move to page 9, part 6?
Mm-hmm.
And my question on this one is, the question is that based on the LEA's review of equity analysis of student diagnostic assessment results, what student groups need additional time, support, and or extracurricular activities, et cetera, et cetera. We only mark low income, student with disabilities, students experiencing homelessness. I know that we're currently doing all this work, but for the equity purposes for next year, because this is going to be for next year, should we, because we are almost 90 whatever percent of white students, should we be marking that? Because then we're leaving those students out. If we don't, does that make sense, Kristen?
Yes, I understand the question. The data that we analyzed found that this was the preponderance of inequity. If you want us to look at specific groups,
for the purpose of the diversity, equity, and inclusion, I think we should.
What's the excluding groups in this list?
It would be all those races.
So is your recommendation to do all of the boxes?
It just seems like any group is going to have will need additional time support.
I'm fine with making that amendment.
I don't
It's I think for me, it's not, I'm not looking at the additional support from the district. It's the exclusion of those students if we do not check those boxes.
Sure. So we will amend that one, 9. We will do all of the boxes.
Maybe. Stop. Sorry, guys. And
Well,
we don't have students in foster care, right, Preston? Is that,
oh, no, we do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we do?
yeah. So my recommendation is we'll just do all of the boxes.
Yeah.
And then we'll actually look at individual data next year, right?
Yes,
Will that work?
yes, please.
Okay.
That's just my own vote. So I'm not quite sure if the rest of my board members agree with me, but
No, it's a
that would,
discussion right now.
and I think that is it for me. Sorry.
Don't be sorry, it's what you're here for.
Number 15, the last page, number 12. And then the last question. Are we supposed to be answering that question?
Can you repeat what you're asking here? You said number 12.
Yeah, page 12,
Page 12,
number
number
15.
Yes, number 15 asks
Up to 3 strategies, right?
up to 3 strategies, and the answer is inclusionary practice will continue to be a focus.
And there's no answer to that one. So is there going to be a response to that number 15 from us?
No, Lisa, our response is that inclusionary practices will continue to be a focus. That's our answer, inclusionary practice.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense?
Up to strategies, interventions, it has, or is it,
I just
please
went
identify up to 3. Okay, so the answer is the inclusion. Okay, okay, got it.
That's correct.
I thought it was just part of the sentence. That's why I was asking.
Yeah, I appreciate, because I actually taught a couple other pieces as well. So we have done this, just know that this plan is intended to be adjusted over time. So once we post it, or we say, oh gosh, we're not going to use math anymore, we can just go in online and take it off. So you're not locked into anything other than making sure that it's in on June 1st so that we can access our money. Okay? So thank you for that. I appreciate that, Lisa.
Of course, thank you.
Bet.
Anything else? Okay, then I would accept the motion to approve Washington LEA Academic and Student Wellbeing Recovery Plan and Resolution 724 in support of that plan.
So move.
Moving seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please signify by saying no. Okay, that plan is approved. Now,
All right.
your turn, Chris.
So thank you very much. I wrote down what Jana wrote. She said doors open for children, and I want to really appreciate this board for being explicit about the children come first. So thank you very, very much. Just a few things that have happened recently. We really have dabbled in vaccinations. I want to thank the board for supporting. We've had multiple. Last week we had our second dose clinic up at Ashford. And today we had our first student clinic at the high school during lunchtime. And we had 25 students that came. Some of them brought their parents, age 16 all the way up to 19. We're finding that our athletes are understanding that if they are vaccinated and if there's an outbreak or if there's an exposure on the team, they will not have to be quarantined. So I appreciate the support around that and Kirk's Pharmacy. So he's been really, really great and a great partner. We have been seeing some spikes, just like in Pierce County. We have seen them in our schools, and they seem to be clustered around families. We are not seeing spread amongst children. What we're seeing is positive cases, and then Heidi, our nurse, is having to go through the contact tracing and being very clear that the Pierce County Health Department tells basically each and every case. It is very frustrating for families. It is It is really hard on Heidi, and it is really, it's almost a no-win situation at times. So when we look at sports, even like the rules that have come out for wrestling, they're really, really difficult to do well. Having the students test twice a week, and then if there's one case, the entire team is quarantined. It's really, we have lobbied, we continue to lobby that we've got to get to a different place because it's just, we feel like one step forward, 2 steps back. So I just want to publicly say, we recognize that this has been a really hard year. We also have had conversations with the Pierce County Health Department. I don't know if you saw today, but they changed their numbers and their metrics. And they're like 300 and plus cases per 100,000. So how we went from 100, like even the numbers don't make sense. So my heart goes out to our families who are trying to navigate through this. Please know that we are partners in your education, and it is just as frustrating for us. It's really heartbreaking. So we hope that fall of 21 is easier. We hope that there are things that will change so that it will make it easier for our educators. However, I must say I'm very pleased with our not having transmission in school. I think that we've proven that over time. We've been open for a long period of time. We have not had outbreaks with our staff. We have not had outbreaks between staff and students. So thank you to all of you that are sending your children, and we will continue to provide wonderful care for them. We do have sports. There is normalcy. So middle school has intramural football and girls basketball, and they are outside. The weather was great last week. I want to thank the coaches. It's been interesting because the high school coaches are actually going down and kind of working with the middle school, which is really great. And it just seems normal. The kids are excited. They're, it's just, if you want to see kids doing great things, our high school is rocking it. They're doing really, really well. They're winning, and they're complying with these crazy rules that we have right now. So there is normalcy. Really, if you're in the schools, if you have an opportunity, I know that we're not letting visitors in, but really it seems like real school, and kids are normal, teachers are normal. We've all kind of normalized this new world that we're in, so it's pretty amazing. As you know, that assessments have been put off into the fall, and so that is one good thing. We'd like them to be maybe pushed down the road a little bit. However, we have, as you just passed that plan, we have ongoing assessments and student voice. I mean, we incorporate all of that on a regular basis. And many times I think that's much more accurate and appropriate. Legislative, I just want to thank our local legislators for supporting schools. They're always very, very progressive. JT has visited with the superintendents from Pierce County and has really wanted to understand about mental health, just really leaning in. So I want to just thank them for, this has been a hard session, and it's all been Zoom, and it's been strange, and there hasn't been the connection. But they did a really, they did a great job for our school and for other schools. So we want to thank them. We know that that was really yeoman's work. I want to thank Kim for her work with fiscal, and thank you for passing the plan. It's been a lot. It's been a lot in a short amount of time. And so to digest that, I know I've been on financial Zooms. I know she's been locked up in her office just to try and figure out the, I don't know how many pages of rules. A couple questions that I have for you. You mentioned about the WASDA presentation. If you do want to present as a group, I am happy to submit that. So if you have an opportunity to talk about that, or you want to send me an email, I can't remember when the presentation is due, but it's due like soon for the pre-session. And then curious about next month, if you would like to have Amy on right now.
Yes.
Okay. Amy, I'm gonna offer you for next month sometime. Would you allow Amy and Marianne to really present next month on their ideas for wraparound services for the freshman and sophomore? It seems like a logical progression into the next. And if you would like to have them do that, I think that that would be kind of the next step. You heard the middle school, and then all children go to the high school. So if you're interested in that, I just wanted to offer that today. And if so,
No,
get that scheduled.
that would tie in really nice.
Yep.
Amy, is that okay? Okay.
Yeah, I have to check with Marianne's schedule, but she is coaching, but I'll have to see, as long as it's fine with her, it's fine with me. She doesn't have a match. So I think that sounds good.
She can just zoom in. She can record at her house. Okay, and that is it for me. On one last note, I haven't written a letter of resignation because I'm just not ready to do that yet, but you've already accepted my resignation. But I will write you a letter, just not quite ready to write it. So you'll get a letter from me.
We know.
Oh, yeah, you will. Thank you.
Just better be good.
It will be good. Or not, you can correct it.
Right on. Okay, board comments. Angelina, would you like to start us off? Do you have any comments to make?
It's really good to see you guys. I feel like I haven't been here in a while. Daffodil has kept me super busy, so I apologize for that. But yeah, I think that's it. Mrs. Rush did a great job on her presentation, and I'm very excited to see everything that the middle school has to offer and see how much we can actually help the students get prepared for high school, because that is very important. I think it will benefit them a lot. So I'm really excited for that.
All right. Very thank you, Angelina. Anybody have anything to?
Even though I know visitors are not allowed in the schools, I did go to Columbia Class last Friday in Wisconsin Creek. And just kind of I stayed out at, I went in a couple classrooms there weren't any students there, but I just kind of walked around and just kind of looked over how they were doing things and chatted with some of the teachers and staff. And I felt like it was fun to in-person them face to face. And I felt like they appreciated that too. And it was good for me to be in the building.
Yeah.
It was good to be there. And I think if we can, you know, and
We can, in my view. We're agents of the district, in my opinion.
yeah, it was definitely, I enjoyed it.
That's a good idea. Anything, Matt?
No.
Lisa, anything from you?
Nope.
Nothing.
Hey, call it.
Right on.
I've enjoyed the dog situation.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
Dog.
Right on. Okay, and then, you know, I would just say in support of what Creston brought up, because I've replied to a lot of emails myself in the last several weeks, and you know, this whole situation is still a hot mess, and it's the school district is doing everything we can to get our kids back in school, and we don't get to make these decisions. We don't get to come up with these numbers, and we are stuck implementing them. So I know everybody here is talking to everybody we can. We are making as much noise as we can, and yeah, this is what we're stuck with for the foreseeable future. So we appreciate the community's patience, and you know, we'll just keep going, get through this. So anybody have anything else to say? All right, then let's adjourn this meeting at 20:45.
Good night.
Yeah.